Around 14 million people in Angola are electing the country's next president today, along with members of the National Assembly. 8 candidates from 7 political parties are vying for the top post in what's expected to be a tight race. Incumbent President Joao Lourenco from the ruling MPLA is seeking a second term in office. He'll face his main opponent, Adal-berto Costa Junior, who's the leader of the country's largest opposition party, UNITA. It is the country's 5th election since independence. Let's talk further about developments in Angola. We can speak to Daniel van Dalen, who is a country risk analyst with Signal Risk. Daniel, a very good afternoon to you. Welcome to the program. So, 2 main candidates, the incumbent and the main opposition. Tell us what they each bring to the table.
Hi, good morning. Good afternoon. I think going into the election, UNITA will be trying to exploit, I think, a lot of the dissatisfaction with the ruling party, which has been in power since, 1975. So coming in, it's, trying to really bolster all the issues that have obviously happened under the ruling administration, such as, high unemployment, corruption, specifically recently, heightened living costs, all of those things. So it's really highlighting, that, they're going to take the country and turn it around. So in that sense, there's a lot of promises by UNITA to root out corruption, a lot of state reform, government reforms, redoing the constitution in some aspects to try and promote democracy. So that's been a big focus for UNITA coming into the polls, just to try and exploit all of those, while, the MPLA is, to some degree, it has acknowledged the faults of its past, but under, Lourenco, we have seen changes come, but unfortunately that hasn't trickled down to the rest of the country as yet. These improvements are only now starting to be realized. So, he's come in, or the MPLA has come in with a sense of, we are getting there, please give us another chance. But I think they are very cognizant that they are going to possibly lose seats in this ballot.
But why have the economic benefits not trickled down to people in Angola when you consider that the country is not just rich in oil? In fact, in terms of oil, it's second only on the continent to Nigeria. It ranks, I think, 7th in the world where diamonds are concerned. So why have not all citizens benefited from their country's riches?
I think it is historic mismanagement of the economy, especially under the Dos Santos regime. Corruption was rife. And, Lourenco took a couple of years to only start to try and correct that. He promised this big economic reform agenda, which started in 2018. The corruption program only really started to gain momentum last year, once, he kind of consolidated a bit of control within the MPLA. So, to fix everything that was wrong under the previous administration has taken time. And unfortunately, it's still going to take some time for the Angolan population to start realizing that, and I think that's again what the MPL is going in to say now. Well, we are starting to fix it. Please give us some chance to make it happen. Because all of it basically stems from they've had a recession for how many years? They only emerged from recently, declining oil output, all of those things. But again, it's not going to happen overnight. So unfortunately, again, they're going into these polls just hoping that the Angolan population is going to see, well, at least we're trying. Let's hope that, we can make this work for you at least in another term.
But the MPLA, as you rightfully said at the beginning, has had 40 years, over 40 years, in fact, to deliver on previous promises. Yes, this is a president who's only served 1 term and is seeking to lead the organization and the country for another. But when is enough of one party, or when has one party been given enough chances?
Absolutely. And I think really the MPLA has, again, acknowledged that, previously to say we know that it hasn't been great, especially under the old administration. And I think that's where you see this big frustration from the Angolan electorate. Polling data is showing a massive decline in support for the MPLA coming into this election. Afrobarometer polls just in 2019 showed very different things compared to now, where the MPL was way ahead of UNITA, where, the most recent poll released at the beginning of the year, they're marginally above, and even then, most Angolans refused to answer. So, going into this election, the MPLA is definitely going to struggle to say, well, we can deliver this time. And I think, unfortunately, that's where, UNITA is really going to be able to to accrue a lot of votes during this ballot.
President Lourenco is 68. His rival from UNITA is 60. The youth vote is expected to play a crucial part in how the outcome pans out at the end of voting. Do these men resonate? Do their promises resonate with the youth of Angola?
I think it's an interesting one to look at because, with the MPLA, they could always count on their liberation dividends and those things where now they can't do it anymore. While, they've promised, a big focus in their campaigning about, we're going to boost education, vocational training, we're going to reform education, we're going to address unemployment in a bid to try and say, well, we actually can't show anything else other than we're going to try to do that. Where Adal-berto Costa Junior, as well as, I think it's more the case of does not resonate with the youth, but I think the youth are seeing him as an only alternative in that respect. So I don't think either particularly resonate with the youth. And again, they've both put out big campaigns about addressing youth unemployment and all those things. But again, I think it's going into these polls where people are just seeing Junior as an alternative only. Versus a preferred candidate in the sense of the youth are resonating with him.
UNITA is interesting, of course, because it's characterized as a former rebel movement. How does a former rebel movement become the second best, or at least a front runner in an election?
I think in a sense they've always positioned themselves as an alternative to the MPLA, and the MPLA has made it easy for them in a sense. We've seen it a lot across Africa where former rebel movements become political parties, and over time, these former rebel movements technically have very little of what they were during, their armed time. So I don't think that's really going to play a role, and especially among the youth voters who don't remember a time when they were a rebel movement. They only see them as an alternative to the MPLA.
Daniel van Dalen, good to speak to you.